Welcome. We're honored and thrilled to have you join us with us to this last virtual panel discussion of the Outgaze Film Festival, a virtual look at embodiment, inclusivity, and resilience. A festival featuring 14 films from local and international filmmakers and 4 virtual events. Outgaze Film Festival is our offering in this moment of resistance. Outgaze Film Festival is produced by Creative Community League and sponsored by Feminist Majority Foundation, New Orleans Film Society, WHIV-FM New Orleans, and Zeitgeist Theater and Lounge. All the films and recordings of the virtual panel discussions will be on view on our website until tomorrow at 11 p.m. Central Time. So I encourage you to watch any of the films if you haven't seen them, or revisit the films that you loved and want to see once more. My name is Amy Irvin, co-director of Outgaze Film Festival. I'm excited to welcome you to this final online panel discussion, Self-Preservation, Self-Care as a Political Act. We're joined by filmmakers Maja Holzinger, director Morning Steph, Natalita and Riley Teahan, director Six and Unbirth, Amanda Madden, director Dear Elsa, 10 Letters and 10 Experiments, and Julia Liu, director Driving While Black Magic, and Vatic Tayari Kuumba, screenwriter Driving While Black Magic. Our moderators for today's panel's discussion are co-director and programmer Amanda Sanfilippo and programmer Meryl Merman. Meryl Merman is a movement artist, filmmaker, and somatic practitioner. Her work focuses on gender and sexuality, the body, media, and human connection. Amanda Sanfilippo is a longtime performance and visual artist, as well as a birth doula and educator. She teaches comprehensive adult sexual education at the Boerberg Theater School in New Orleans. Lastly, a special shout out to Chris Hammersley, Outgaze's talented tech and operations guy working behind the scenes. So again, welcome to Outgaze Film Festival. And we're bringing all of our filmmakers up onto the screen here. Welcome, everyone. So glad to see you and have you join us. Yeah. There we are. And there is Meryl and Amanda, our moderators. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to you, Amanda and Meryl. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everybody. We're so happy to have you here with us. Maja, I'm glad you got on. Nice to see you. We're so honored for you all to join us this evening. For us to work on this festival in this really intense time in our world, globally, nationally, and personally, it was important for us to consider ways in which the alienation of an online event could be countered with some form of communing and connecting. This was no easy challenge, given how new the online film platform is for all of us. But we felt it was really important to have this conversation, and it feels like an act of care that we can offer in this emerging format and also this moment in history. An offer of space for us to dream together about what filmmaking and filmmaking community can look like in the future, and a more expansive sense of feminist cinema. So thank you all for being here tonight. Amanda, you're muted.
Okay, thanks everyone. It's so great to see all these incredible people who made all these films. I haven't seen you live, and I just wanted to quote the great Audre Lorde, who said a very important thing, which is caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So just that we're taking care of ourselves is highly political. And in all of your films, those messages came through, how and the ways we can take care of ourselves. As filmmakers and film programmers, many conversations focus on lack of access for female and BIPOC and LGBTQ folks and filmmakers in a very male-dominated film industry. So we're trying to reframe, how do we self-care and how do we self-preserve collectively, which is really, really important, and personally. So in other words, instead of focusing on lack, How do we focus on agency through the use of care as a tool? From the subjects of your films to personal experiences making non-male centered cinema, how does care become kind of a political activism? And how, as a community, can we foster ways to embed care into the paradigm of how we uphold and support one another to bring new visions and voices to cinema? So those are the kinds of questions. We're going to break down those questions, and we're going to do it in a round robin kind of way where each one of you could answer that question if you feel up to it. You, of course, totally don't have to answer that if you don't, any of the questions if you don't feel up to it, but also we would love to hear from you. So we're going to start off with Riley. And then we'll move kind of clockwise so that it'll go Maja, Amanda, Vatic, and Julia. Does that sound okay to y'all? You can just put your thumbs up. Great, thanks. Thanks, Vatic, I saw that. We're gonna break down the questions and then one by one. And Riley, if you feel like answering the first question, that's how it'll go, then Maja, Amanda, Vatic, and Julia. So thank you so much for participating. Okay.
And so the first part of that question that we're interested in is, how does the content of your film explore care?
That's to you, Riley.
Cool. Just writing it down. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with y'all, to speak on the panel, and to show 6 and Unbirth as part of this really inspiring lineup of work. My name is Riley Teahan. My collaborator Natalita is not with us tonight, but we very much made the film in collaboration. And in terms of the content of our film, I mean, we set out to tell a story which was very much based on music that Natalita had written and journeys that she and I had both been on, I think, at the time that we were creating the work, of telling a story of like a woman who, through entering and reckoning with the darkness, thereby liberates herself and finds her freedom and finds her power. And I think something that in all of our work, in all of our collaborative work that Natalita and I do, we think a lot about the darkness and the ways in which like our culture now, the culture of white supremacy, of capitalism, of patriarchy, like very much has shunned and has like shunned and demonized like the darkness and the dark feminine, and how there's such deep power in that, and how that's like a source of such a source of inspiration and of life. The first, like the depths of the ocean, the darkness of the womb, the darkness of the cave, of the cunt, of the, like, just there's so much in that, and the darkness of the dark period of the moon, and how I think in our culture very much we've like, we in like the dominant culture, I should say, we've like become afraid to reckon with that darkness, and that darkness that I so deeply associate with the divine feminine. And so we wanted to tell a story that was like very much just sitting in that darkness and what it means to find power there. And we're here, we created the project in Louisiana. We created it with a community of women and femmes who just like offered their time to us to like work through some of these themes. And we both come from a background of theater and performance art, so we were working very theatrically, very intuitively. We were blessed to be able to go to some land in Louisiana near the Amite River, and the land itself was like so, I mean, if anyone based in Louisiana knows, like already here the swamp is like such a dark place of like, it's not like fully accessible to us. There's so much that we can't, like, that lies beneath the surface or under the water that we can't fully know. And like being in the swamp with all these women and just like working, creating theater, creating performance together. Obviously, there was so much that came up and so much healing that happened between us all. So it really felt like, I think, yeah, the film is like quite a journey, and it takes the shape of sort of a visual album, and there are 6 parts to it. The number 6 itself being like a symbol, a sacred symbol of darkness, of like going inside of oneself, of spiraling in. And so, yeah, I think that as women, and it was like an absolute necessity to just like prioritize care and make that a part of both like the concept for the film, and also, and I'm sure we'll speak on this later, but like also part of the process. And I think that, yeah, ultimately, like the story is one of like when we allow ourselves to sit in that darkness or go deep within, that's like a deep form of self-care and of like care for community as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Who is next? You're muted, Amanda. Maja.
I think it was Maja was next.
Yeah. Hey, in terms of self-care, in the context of my film Morning Steph, I pretty much would like to second everything that Riley said about stepping into the darkness and connecting with parts of yourself that are not accessible to you in any other way. And that it's a journey of entering a labyrinth in which you can lose yourself, and it can be hard to find a way back. But my film deals with a different aspect of that, which is just simply that every single day is an opportunity to start anew, no matter where, no matter how far you go into the underworld. Every single day you have the opportunity to start anew, and it really is as simple as that.
Thank you, Maja. I think it was Julia, then Vatic, or
Amanda was next, I think. Yeah.
Sorry, Amanda. Sorry. I guess I should write it down.
No worries. Thank you. Wow, it's really moving to hear you speak about your films, and it's really cool to be with all of you. I was really moved by your films, and then to hear about you speak of them is really special. I think for my film, I think the film itself to me really feels like the story of me like learning about care. And I think that before I started the project, there were just a lot of things in my life that I felt like I was sort of teetering on these edges about things that really related to my identity as a woman person. And whenever I'm saying woman, I'm using an X in it, just so you know, for our purposes. But it was related to like sort of my womanhood identity and also my artist identity. And I really felt like there were all these places in my life where I felt like I was teetering on these edges. So places of like mental health and having like pretty intense panic attacks for the first time in my life, and feeling like I was caught between panic and mania, feeling like I couldn't find community, feeling like I was really questioning like, you know, art felt like the truest thing to me, but like, could that really be like a life that I could have? Really seeing the dominance in the industry of such a cis hetero patriarchal view of representation, and I think like some of my responses were to kind of like throw myself at things. It was not a caring response. It was sort of just like, I felt like I had to like throw myself in the fire. And so I was at this place of like being on these edges. And then I met Elsa, and the artist who I connected with throughout the film. And there was just something about her being a feminist, being an artist, being a woman. And it felt like it just touched on all of these things that I was experiencing, like even things I couldn't connect directly, but it was like, why do I feel like I don't have a creative community? Like, why do I feel so alone? And so I felt less alone when she showed up. And so I guess there's something about care to me that's like listening to who shows up, and those are, our ancestors, and are like maybe our actual ancestors, but like our art ancestors. Like, she's from the early 1900s, and she's with me now, and I've learned so much from her. And so the project really then became about like going through this process of figuring out like, how could I sustain myself as a feminist woman artist? Like, how could I care for myself? And my project was to just turn all of that inside out and put it on the screen, because that seemed useful to me for maybe other people to see someone go through that process. And so, I was exploring things like pain, and like pushing my body to places that were like really uncomfortable, and pushing my psyche to places that were really uncomfortable. And so none of that actually was caring, but I think it led me to a place of understanding that care is not hurling yourself into these places, but sort of, as you said, Maja, like taking it one day at a time. Like, how nuanced can we get? How specific can we get? And how can we sort of stay in the questions of things rather than try to grasp for answers? And so I think that feels like a really, really important part of care for me. And now at this point, it's like, I'm so excited for the next project, because I think I had to make this one to figure out how to care for myself, to then like care for others in the process of making the next project.
Thank you. Thank you. Vatic, what are your thoughts on this?
I can speak, but I mean, I feel more comfortable with Julia set the space for Driving While Black Magic, and I'll come in after, if that's cool.
Good. Yeah.
All right.
You're muted, Julia.
Man, it's so tricky. So in regards to Driving While Black Magic, I think the self-care component of the story is the main character's rituals of protection and decolonization. And I recently heard on a podcast, there's something about this term, like the colonization of self-care, actually, and how it's become like the thing that like you think of as selfish, whereas it's just preservation, and so a lot of it is just telling yourself like you're allowed to be here, and you're worthy, and you're just as good as everybody else. And so that is like a kind of a important theme in the film. And I think that was one of the things that drew me originally to the writing, which my film partner, Vatic, created the story and the characters. But yeah, I think that was originally one of the things that drew me to the content.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for being drawn into the content, and just appreciate all the filmmakers and sharing such like deep analysis for their work. And I just love listening to it. When I originally started writing the story for Driving While Black Magic, it's part of a larger piece called A Furtive Movement, The Use of Farce. And I had just got done working on a theater piece where 3 Black characters died. And so as we're doing this piece, when you're doing theater, you're living with it every single rehearsal, like it's real. And so what I wanted to write was something that was going to deal with like this issue of police brutality, but wasn't going to do it in a way that was going to be like playing off of trauma, the whole thing. But we have to deal with trauma because like it's, police brutality. And so I came up with the idea of creating like a comedy and like I call it a comedy in the sense where no one is supposed to have died throughout the whole play. And there's this character who is a male character, and like oftentimes in a farce type of situation, like I'm really into like Richard Pryor and things like that, you'll have the male character and they'll be the dominant piece, and then they might have a wife or something like that, and no one knows anything about that character. And so what I wanted to do with the piece was to flip it, and oftentimes we talk about, you know what I'm saying, the rightful focus on like George Floyd and things like that, right? But then sometimes you do forget about like a Breonna Taylor or other folks who are not maybe like right at the center of the violence, but are also affected by it. And so there's this character who, as we're moving through, as Julia was saying, she's doing this ritual to protect her on the way to coming home. And like there's a lot of different things. There's like the incense, there's the poetry that she's listening to from the self-help guru, there's the, she wants comfort food. There are all these ways that we have this ritual. And then like, what I'm saying, Julia really like, what I'm saying, you're hitting it on the head where they're talking about this like this appropriation of this idea of self-care and how it's going to be commodified and all these different things, but it's really ritual. And I think that in our piece, what we're trying to do is like, really take that ritual, take that culture, which are the things that are most important to us, and use those as frames for magic. And so that's really where we're exploring care in our piece, Drywall Black Magic.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Amanda, do you want to share the next question for everybody?
Yeah, I do. So how do you create with care? And to all of our filmmakers, how do you create with care and embed care into your artistic process and on the set of the production? How did that work for you? I think we're all trying to include care even in our process of creation and production.
Yeah, I really love this question. And I'm so excited to hear how everyone responds, because I think there's so much to learn. I don't come from a film world or paradigm, but I do come from theater, and I think like in any type of industry standard that's like rooted in capitalism, there's always like this like, I don't know, I think there can be kind of like a violence in how we approach our work, just in terms of like what is expected of people, how much everyone is working. And like, I love to work hard and I love dedication. But I also think like, whoa, what these like 12 to 18 hour days like on set, like that, to me, that's like, I have a hard time like grooving with that. I get tired. And so I think like something for me and Natalita for sure was like, okay, we don't really want to adhere to any kind of, like we're aware of what industry standards are at play or like how things are done. But I think we really wanted to empower ourselves to kind of pick and choose, like what if that was actually like helpful or worth carrying forward? Because I think so often, right, like we engage in these industries and we do things and there isn't much time to think like, why are we even doing it this way? And so we were very intentional about just like how to honor our own time and our own energy and our own cycles, like especially just like the cycles of our own bodies, and knowing like when we have energy and when we might like need rest, and like build that into our production schedule. And I think it's funny, like I think it's something that she and I we're working on our next film right now, and like I can't say that it's been like a chill process but I think there's definitely an intention to just like be honoring our bodies and not like be suffering for art, because I know I have suffered a lot like working on a project just by like not sleeping or not eating or not taking care of myself. And it's like, is that really what you like? This is like art we're making, and so it feels like of the utmost for us to just like also be well, so that can be like that kind of wellness can be transmitted through the work. And especially I think like we tend to do like big collaborative projects, and we tend to work with folks who are offering their time and energy to us like with no compensation. And that like I can say a lot about that, but I think it's just like when you're collaborating in that way and people are just like offering themselves, it feels like the most important thing is that everyone can be cared for and everyone can be fed and everyone can be like well. And so yeah, I think that embedding that into the process feels like of the utmost and really, really essential to how we work. And I think it's been like we've been receiving the benefits of that and really attracting people who want to like carve a new way forward or just like create in a new way. And I really think of how much I've like caused myself to suffer, or like how much I've been sick with stress in the past, and like there's just I feel there's no use for it, truly. Like everything is going to get done, and I think there's like such a divine timing in everything, and like just trying to be like listening to creator or to source or to spirit, and trusting that like exactly what is happening and what is being accomplished is the exact right thing for the process. And so I think just like having a mantra of trust and really like knowing what people need in order to feel held in collaboration feels really important.
Thank you. Super wise. Maja.
Yeah, that is a huge question around how to adhere to those pretty rigid how is like the common view of productivity and how a film production streamline should look like versus to at which extent we still stay connected to our intuition and our most like to the reason why we went into that in the first place. And that's something that's very challenging to me at this moment still, and I don't have any clear answers in my own work. I feel like I've often betrayed those ideas of what I need for my own care, or what others might, in terms of that versus the need to go forward, the need for the show to continue. And personally I've paid for that with like having fever or losing sense of connection to yeah, it's extremely complicated how to preserve that that need for utter most efficient productivity, and yet staying in touch with how you feel at a given day, and maybe sometimes it's time to take a break. I wish I could really figure out how to work around that balance, and it might mean to literally come up with ways like, yes, why not, to pay attention to your cycles, and especially when it's a small production. But when there's a lot of people involved, a lot of pressure, a lot of schedules and conflicting things and money, it becomes extremely challenging. And those moments of embedding care in the process of production could just simply mean having confidence in yourself to be like, I need to step aside. I don't need to give you an answer right now. I need some time to just take care of myself, and I'll tell you when I'm ready. Because a lot of times the process of making a film is about making decisions constantly, and sometimes to make a decision you need to say, I don't know right now, I'll tell you when I know. And to just come up to a place where you feel confident to tell you to say that, to show this vulnerability and self-care in a way like, I don't know right now, I need a moment. And to even in your own mind realize that you're entitled to that has been extremely challenging to not adhere to that pressure. We have to go. You need to know. It has to happen right now. Yeah, to just trust yourself. It's a long, I guess it's a process. So I'm still figuring it out.
It's a journey for sure. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's very, very true.
Thanks. Yeah, I love what you said about like, I don't know. We should be able to say, I don't know. I think that's really important. And also what you were saying, Riley, about just being bodies, like we are bodies doing this work and making art and all of this. And that just feels like, yeah, I agree that capitalism kind of teaches us to forget that. And so I think remembering that when we're making work can be a form of care. I have so many like random thoughts about this. This project is like a little bit unique for me because I made it completely by myself, which is not something I like necessarily want to do. I like really believe in collaboration and really working with people, and but that this project just required it. And I guess it was a collaboration with Elsa, with my ghost friend. And also felt like connected widely to like, you know, these like the feminist artists that I'm learning from. But I think in terms of, you know, so specifically for this project, I think a big part of creating care in the process was learning how to set boundaries. And I didn't know that at the beginning. And I started doing these channeling experiments, trying to channel Elsa. And after the first 3 experiments, I actually got really sick, and I had to stop. It felt dangerous. It felt really scary. And that was sort of a moment of being like, oh, okay, like I've opened some portal, I think, to places where I need to be careful. You know, like this is a dangerous place to open up. And so I took some time to talk to some spiritual guide friends and sort of figure out like how I could create boundaries around these experiments. And so that was one way that I embedded care into my process, was just sort of like, you know, after that point, when I was doing the channeling experiments, I would tell somebody I was doing them that day. I would set aside a certain amount of time to do it. I would sort of build in aftercare practices. Yeah, and then the other thing and I also kind of had to do that around feedback with this film, because I think with something like this, where the whole thing was just like me turning myself inside out and putting that on the screen, that was the point of the whole project. It was really weird to show it to people and get critique. And not that like I don't want critique, like of course I want feedback, but I had to really figure out how to separate like those comments from you know, the comments that were about the film, I couldn't read as comments about like me as a person. And so that was a distinction that I had to learn through the process. And that was like sort of a painful learning. And then I guess I was also thinking about intuition and messiness as like feminist practices, I guess, sort of anti-perfectionism. I think perfectionism is something that really gets held up in like the dominant oppressive systems. And if we are striving for perfectionism, then we are not doing the messy work that we need to be doing. And so like in terms of, you know, more specifically in my process, I think sometimes that meant you know, letting things be messy on the screen, letting a frame be imperfect, letting the edit be imperfect, and really more trusting, like intuitively knowing when I was done, or intuitively knowing that like, you know, this needs to last a certain amount of time, or like I really love this for some reason, or like this makes me feel something in my body, and so I want this on the screen, rather than trying to like nitpick every single frame and every light and every piece of the image. So I think I think that room for messiness was like a way that I brought care in and kind of stayed authentic tried to in the piece.
Thank you.
I'm glad that this is being recorded, so we all have notes, because this is fabulous advice to everybody. I love it.
Yeah.
Julia.
I think you're muted.
I'll get it one of these days. I totally second the boundaries thing, and I also second the fact that I don't know the answer to this, because production is extremely unhealthy, and the culture of it is just, yeah, get the shot, and that's just so harmful. So I think with artwork that I can control the schedule. It's like it's like trying to build in, you know, time and taking space. But also it's like all these other people's schedules, even if it's like, I consider, you know, Driving While Black Magic, that was, you know, a passion project, but it involved, you know, 15 or 20 people on one day coming together. And so there's a lot of pressure, like you said, when like the resources are all there, you're just like, oh, I can't mess up because all these people are here, like to like create your vision. It's just a lot. So that, I don't know. That's a great question. I think trying to make it worth it for people who show up and, you know, give their time and talent to a project. But I find a really unhealthy pattern that I just am like, well, I'll just take on more work, or I'll pay for it, or I'll whatever. And so that's not healthy. But I'm trying to get better. And I think for things that are just like the business side of it, if you're like doing it for a job, it's setting boundaries and telling people and managing people's expectations of what work you're supposed to accomplish. But yeah, this is a hard question.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like you're just being so honest about it is really important too, because the reality is that's not only how it is in film production, but because everybody else has got other jobs or trying to meet other expectations in the whole of the society, there's the pressure comes from outside and from the inside. So just being honest about that is really helpful. And thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with, I'm getting notes from everybody, like hearing everybody's practice and the things that they're saying. And so I'm jotting them down, and I'm thinking about, you know, things on the production, which may not necessarily seem like care, like Julia, but you had food on the set, you know? So there was food, there's like fruit. It wasn't always just like cookies, but there were those cookies that were there that were delicious that you could just eat a cookie. You know, I noticed, so like I come from a theater world, I come from a poetry world, and so like I'm moving into this space of film and just seeing those different things. But like when I'm doing I'm doing art projects, or I'm doing a bunch of things, like how folks are saying, like, you know, at a certain point you are sacrificing yourself and doing, like, putting a lot of stress on you. And something that I've been like trying to hold on to, especially in this pandemic where we haven't stopped working, like we're jumping from one Zoom to another, is like the work that we're doing, it's like building us to become stronger. So it's like, you know, that's something that I hold for myself. So like anything that's challenging me, anything that's like giving me stress, like I don't allow it to stress me. It's just a game. I'm building myself bigger. Thinking about ritual and like equating care. So for this, I'm going to equate care to ritual, because I feel like for me, that is the thing that helps me like go through my day, is ritual. It is singing songs. It is, you know what I'm saying? Like I have 2 daughters and they spend a lot of the day just singing songs to themselves, you know, like that is a thing that we have for ourselves to like fortify us from, you know, the monotony of our day. So like I've really been doing that. When we were on the set, it was something that I was really starting to explore for myself. So I was like, I grew up in Florida. So like people were talking about the swamps and stuff. So like I know about the swamps. I grew up in Florida. And I grew up like a church, right? Like that was the religion, like Southern Baptist, whatever, right? And so like becoming like a person that thinks on my own, like obviously I have problems with the stuff that I learned in there, right? And so like just been exploring my own, like, what is my own spiritual practice? What are my rituals? And so like in coming into that, we started doing this film, and it just so happens the first day we were shooting was right on the corner was a Botanica, right? And so I go in there, they got the Yimi Ya, they got the Shango. So I got those, brought them to the set to help bless it. I got some candles. We kept some candles, you know what I'm saying, going. I had the sage, you know what I'm saying? So like we created a space and we had ritual amongst each other. And I think that that is something that I would just like offer for folks. Like, what are the artistic things that we're doing with people on the set? What are the conversations so that it's not, you know? And also we took like that photo at the end, and that's like, we took a moment. It was like 3 a.m. in the morning, right? We have all sacrificed our, but we're gonna lay down and take this picture, and so we got it. So it's like things like that. I think we have our own rituals and the things that we do for care, and it's just sometimes just stopping to think about it and being intentional.
Yeah, that brought tears to my eyes. You're 100% amazing advice, and beautifully said, Vatic. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I just jump in really quick and say that Vatic was just burning sage on the side, like just like it was the best. So anyway, and I was, yeah, I like didn't realize that till after because I was too caught up. And like, and I see that and I'm like, oh, like that's amazing. Yeah. Anyway,
Your body probably felt it though.
I think so.
Yeah,
Just,
I feel like
intentionality is amazing. How it, you know, physiologically even gets into us, you know, our system.
yeah. Thank you all. Those are such important notes and cues, and like just to sing a song or whistle while you're not working. And yeah, thank you, Vatic. That was so beautiful to bring in the ritual aspect of that. While we're working, we can bring in ritual, and that helps to alleviate the nervous system as well.
Yeah.
So
I think
yeah.
it segues really nicely into our next question too, which is how do we do this as a community, you know, to shift the paradigm of how we uphold and support one another to bring new visions and voices to cinema? So how do we care as community? You know, and that could start with your own kind of self-care, but then how does that maybe expand outward? And this is a question that's a bit futuristic, so maybe it's not even something we've actually tried yet, but I wanted to be playful and explore what possibilities might, you know, exist in our communal wildest imaginations for this moving forward.
I think you're muted.
Riley.
Good. I was just like thinking a lot. I think what's coming up for me, I mean, I feel it. It's this moment that we're in with the pandemic has been like such an interesting invitation in a lot of ways to simplify and reflect and a reminder too that like care for self and for community, which I think are very much the same, is like the way forward. And though it's been super challenging, I think like moments like this, like of just being able to share space with y'all and like for new types of programming or new ways of being together to like emerge from this moment feels like such a blessing. And actually like all of the, I'm like watching as so many of the systems that were and the powers that be kind of like are becoming irrelevant in many ways. And like, so I mean, I think always like in terms of how to shift that paradigm, right? Like it's very much like the internal work that we all do is always going to affect the external, and they're super symbiotic. So I think that I think carving out like time and space, or just to really like, oh man. So I'm chewing my words right now. I don't know if you can tell. I think this is such a huge question, and it's like such a beautiful invitation to be thinking about this. And I think like I feel like festivals and panels and opportunities like this to just like center new voices, new eyes, new ways of seeing, like feels really powerful. I think any opportunity, like I think that already being based in New Orleans, there's like such a beautiful DIY community here. And I think like so much of what's emerged like in the wake of the pandemic and the uprisings is like, yeah, if you want something to happen, like you have to do it yourself, and like not wait for anyone to give you permission or give you the tools or give you the funding to realize your vision or to get your message out. Like there's so much abundance. And I think like that was something I wanted to touch on, was just like being like present to the abundance that's around us and really creating from that place, and like not feeding a scarcity mentality. And I think that when we do that, like on an individual level and then on a collective or collaborative level, like that really reverberates outwards. And once you begin to turn your attention to the abundance that's around you and work from that place and use that as a source, like it is the gift that keeps on giving. And so I think just to like not be afraid to do what you want to do, and like say the thing you need to say and make the thing that you want to make, and just like be fearless, because this life is so precious. And if anything, like this moment right now is like a reminder that we're all we've got, and like this is like we have no choice but to make do with what we have, and like we have so much actually.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a really, really good reminder. The abundance scarcity framework is, yeah, thank you for that. It's a gift.
Maja, I think you're muted.
Okay. To be perfectly honest, I'm a little confused with the question because it seems very complex, and I'm not sure what it's exactly about.
Yeah,
Can you rephrase it in a simpler way?
Is, how can we bring our practices of self-care into the community? Specifically the community of filmmaking, to kind of shift maybe how film is made or how we engage as a community of filmmakers. How can we use care as a tactic?
Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing I really that really resonated with me, what was said today, is introducing ritual to the world of cinema, and I think that's an extremely powerful practice where you can introduce ritual to the process of filmmaking. I really love that idea of how you guys did it, and bringing that in is powerful, and centering filmmaking around ritual as well. And in terms of the community and shifting perspective, I feel like it's one thing is trusting yourself, and another thing is diversifying perspective of who gets to speak and whose perspective is presented. As simple as that. It's just diversifying whose perspective is going to be presented.
Thank you. It's a really important point as well. Amanda, I think, is next, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. One thought I just had, just a side note, I guess, is related to this I love this idea of bringing ritual into filmmaking, and it feels like something I really want to think a lot more about. And also I'm just like remembering that filmmaking is ritual. Like, you know, this exchange we have with the camera, and then this exchange we have with the audience, and like this that's magical. You know, there's something like, I think we all know, like some magic happens when a camera turns on, and that's not always good, but like there is something really powerful. There is a powerful kind of magic that I know I have felt when a camera turns on, and thinking about like, what kind of truth is that? And so I love the idea of bringing ritual in, and also like, how can we like take this ritual that already exists and just transform it so that everybody can see that part of it. Yeah, this question is so big and so exciting to like, even just the question itself makes me feel better. Like it feels like community care just asking this together. I think that this, you know, I would say like watching these films the past 2 weeks, I watched all of them, and I just like that, and it felt like this balm for this time. You know, it felt like, it just like it felt so good. And I was watching them alone, and I felt connected to all of you. You know, I felt connected to your stories, and I felt connected to you as makers. And I think that like, we are in this really interesting time of being isolated. And so like, yeah, what does community mean? But just to kind of echo what everybody else said, I mean, I think there's abundance there. And like, of course, it's not the same as all being in a room together right now, but like, rather than focusing on, you know, what we're lacking, I think there is so much abundance here in terms of community, and like the ways that we're able to share this with each other. And like, there are things that we can do here that we couldn't do in a room together, in terms of accessibility or other things. So that's something I get excited about in terms of community care. I think we're learning, I hope, and I think that this time is teaching a lot of us like how to find community in different ways and in new ways, and how to care for each other in different and new ways. And then, just the one other thing I wanted to say about this is like, I really deeply believe that caring for ourselves is community care, and that and it's not even like one or the other. It's not like I do one and then the other one happens. It's like they are like interconnected. I really feel that to be true. So I think that any ways that we learn to take care of ourselves, like that is us taking care of our community, because we're showing that to our community. So we're showing our community what care looks like. And then we're also like engaging with our community from a cared for place, and from a place where like we have what we need, we are intact, we are we are within our bodies. And then we're showing up in that way. So that that just feels important to name here.
Thank you. That's so wonderful just to hear about. It's kind of echoing Audre Lorde. Like, when we take care of ourselves, we're taking care of each other and, you know, the world in a certain way.
Got it. So everything that everyone's been saying is so on point. And I was thinking I could add to this, and then I realized, like, I think COVID right now is a time where it is like really like a good segue into being like, hey, these are my boundaries about what I'll, you know, about safety and my own personal like comfort and caring for myself, because it's like on the most essential way. It's like keeping yourself and your family and your community safe. So I think that anytime like moving forward, there's just like, if you're going to engage in any kind of partnership with people or take a job or have a conversation about, one, checking in, because 2020 has been so terrible, and connecting as humans that way, but then also being like, hey, like, what's going on with COVID? Like, do you like, what are your protocols, or what do you like, are you are you shooting indoors right now, are you shooting just outdoors, stuff like that. So that's like kind of a more specific thing, but I think really important, and I think it's important to me that we like change that culture and are just like talking about it at the beginning of every like time you start a job, pretty much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, like what are our boundaries and what are our expectations? Definitely.
Cool. Yeah, boundaries, expectations, so important. Everything everybody said is really resonating with me in the conversation. I feel like the thing in this moment that we need to shift the most is power, and to think about like the relationships that folks have to power, and like, you know, I very much agree with this idea around like, instead of waiting for like HBO or for Netflix or whoever to come knocking, to like take the power and take the control to like produce things on your own. But then like when folks are doing that producing, I would ask us to like re-examine our relationship to power and like how we are working with people on the set. And so like I really do appreciate like Julia, you know, like she didn't necessarily have to invite me to this, right? Like she was the director, she could have just been here. But it's like there's a practice of like sharing, you know what I'm saying, sharing power, sharing opportunities, having conversations, being transparent, and not duplicating what the, you know what I'm saying, like what a male director or whatever, that you don't have to be aggressive, you know what I'm saying, all the time. You can be receptive, you know what I'm saying. And someone mentioned like the divine feminine, right? Like we all have the polarity of these, you know what I'm saying, these different energies. And I think that we need to like understand that, and like, you know, this would be a futuristic type of thing, but wouldn't it be transformational if your whole crew knew about that? Like if everybody's like, Julia and I were talking, and I was just like, I don't want any like Donald Trump people like working on this film, right? Like I don't want someone who's going to come in and not understand that we're doing transformational type work. So it's like, how do we have that conversation, like the goals and expectations, but also talk about cis hetero patriarchy, also talk about, you know what I'm saying, like anti-racism, anti-capitalism, and embed that into how we do work in working as a crew, as a community. So so those are the things that are coming up for me, and I just appreciate everybody like welcoming me into this space, and I will pass it back to our moderators.
Thank you, Vatic. I feel that is something Maja brought up too, is this diversity of perspective. And in the, we don't have much more time, but I hope and appreciate that this festival that Meryl and all of us, Amy and Meryl and Chris and I all worked so hard on, was to open that up, to open up these perspectives, and also the beautiful idea that resilience comes with care, that part of resilience is care, and caring for each other and caring for ourselves. And, you know, Meryl and I, like, we would have to laugh every now and then. And, you know, while we were putting this together, like naked people were walking behind me, and Amy was like, wait, what's going on? And like, have a laugh. Like we're in these strange, isolated places, but we're also seeing into them with diverse eyes. And I just appreciate all of y'all for coming through and being here and having this conversation. It's so enlightening for me as an artist and a filmmaker, very tiny filmmaker, but yeah, and just appreciating all the films and your work.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I don't want to keep people much beyond, but we did have a few audience just that left comments saying how much they were appreciating this conversation and everything you guys shared. I'm really happy. This will be recorded, so you know, if folks want to reference it or share it into the future, all of these great ideas that I think we can take into not only artistic practices, but how we, you know, engage in our jobs, in our life, in our relationships. I really appreciate the generosity of everybody's offerings today. It was super inspiring, and I'm really happy we got to, you know, talk in a circle, a virtual circle for a little bit.
Virtual circle. Thank you, Meryl. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, all of these filmmakers. And please enjoy the films and share them and keep making movies in the beautiful way that you have.
Yeah, if anyone wants to offer one last comment or anything into the room, please do. We have like about a minute left, so I don't want to cut anyone off. Okay.
I love this panel. That's all I wanted to say.
Me too.
Yeah, thank you for your questions.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Yeah.
All right, lots of
Keep making the work. Keep making the work,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye.
Be in touch. Bye.